The wedding dress fit perfectly? That was the problem. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I stood in the bridal boutique's dressing room, watching the seamstress chalk tiny marks along the hem, her fingers dancing around the scar tissue that wrapped from my left ankle to mid-calf like melted wax. She didn't flinch, didn't stare. Professional courtesy, I supposed. "Your fiancé is a lucky man," she said, smiling up at me. Through the curtain, I could hear Marcus's voice in the waiting area, laughing with someone on the phone. That deep, easy laugh that had first caught my attention 2 years ago at the hospital fundraiser. Back when I still believed luck was something that happened to people like me. "Final fitting in 2 weeks," the seamstress continued, standing and brushing off her knees. "Then you'll be all set for the big day? The big day? October 15th. 200 guests. The country club overlooking the bay. String quartet? Imported roses. Every detail meticulously planned by Marcus's mother, Victoria, who had very specific ideas about how a Thorne family wedding should look. I changed back into my clothes, a long linen skirt that covered most of the scarring, paired with a silk blouse that hid the patches on my arms. 7 years of practice had made concealment a reflex. The fire that had torn through my college apartment had taken my roommate's life and left me with a roadmap of survival etched into my skin. Marcus was scrolling through his phone when I emerged, still laughing at whatever had amused him. He looked up, his smile faltering for just a microsecond before brightening again. That tiny hesitation had been happening more frequently lately. "All done, babe?" He stood, pocketing his phone. "Perfect timing. Mom wants us for dinner tonight." Something about the seating chart. Of course she did. We walked to his car, a sleek Mercedes that his father had gifted him when he made partner at the law firm. Marcus held the door open, the gentleman he'd always been, and I slid into the leather seat that probably cost more than my first car. "You seem quiet," he said, pulling into traffic. "Everything okay with the dress?" "It's perfect." "Good, good." His hand found mine on the center console, but his grip felt distant. "Listen, I've been thinking about the honeymoon. We'd planned 2 weeks in Bali, private villa, infinity pool. The kind of place where you could forget the world existed. What about it? Maybe we should consider somewhere different. The Maldives, perhaps. More private. Less crowded beaches." I understood what he wasn't saying. In Bali, there would be other tourists. Public beaches. Places where my scars would be visible in a swimsuit. The Maldives offered seclusion, privacy, invisibility. "Whatever you think is best," I heard myself say. His relief was palpable. "Great. I'll have my assistant look into it." We drove in silence through the afternoon traffic, past the glass towers of downtown toward the exclusive neighborhood where his parents lived. I watched the city blur past my window, thinking about the woman I'd been before the fire. Pre-med student, fearless, arrogant even, planning to become a surgeon, to save lives with these same hands that were now decorated with pink and white tissue. The fire had rearranged everything. Not just my skin, but my trajectory. I'd switched to hospital administration instead. Behind the scenes, still helping people, I told myself, just differently, from a safe distance where no one had to look too closely. "Oh, before I forget," Marcus said, turning onto his parents' street. "Mom invited some people tonight. The Wainwrights. And Courtney." My stomach tightened. Courtney Ashford. Marcus's ex from law school. The one who'd gone on to become a corporate attorney at his father's firm. The one Victoria had wanted him to marry before I came along. "Should be fun," I said flatly. Marcus squeezed my hand. "She's engaged now?" "To that hedge fund guy. This is just Mom being social." Everything was always just Victoria being social. The Thorne estate sprawled across 3 acres of manicured perfection. The house itself was a modern masterpiece of glass and steel, all sharp angles and expensive taste. Marcus's father, Richard, had built his real estate empire from nothing, and this house was his monument to success. Victoria met us at the door, immaculate in white linen, Her blonde hair styled in that effortless way that required a team of professionals. She air-kissed Marcus before turning to me with her practiced smile. "Natalie, darling, you look lovely." Her eyes flickered down to my covered arms, my long skirt. "Though you must be warm in all those layers." "I'm comfortable. Of course." She stepped aside, ushering us in. "Everyone's out on the terrace. Marcus, your father wants to speak with you about something work-related. Natalie, why don't you join the ladies for cocktails?" It wasn't a suggestion. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The terrace overlooked an infinity pool that seemed to merge with the bay beyond. Courtney was holding court near the outdoor bar, her laugh carrying across the space like wind chimes. She wore a white sundress that showed off her perfect tan, her perfect legs, her perfect everything. "Natalie." She waved me over, her smile wide and sharp. "I was just telling everyone about the wedding. October 15th, right? Such a beautiful time of year? Yes? And the country club." Victoria showed me the photos of the venue. Absolutely stunning. She sipped her champagne. "I'm trying to convince Blake to let me plan something similar when we tie the knot, but he wants to elope. Can you imagine?" I couldn't. Blake Morrison stood nearby, his arm around Courtney's waist, looking mildly uncomfortable in expensive casual wear. He seemed nice enough, quiet, the kind of man who was probably used to being an accessory to Courtney's spotlight. "So, Natalie," Victoria said, joining us with fresh drinks. "I wanted to discuss the photographer's timeline. He's requesting an hour for portraits before the ceremony, but I think that's excessive. Don't you?" "Whatever you think is best." Victoria's smile tightened. "Well, it's your wedding too, dear. You should have opinions." But we both knew the truth. This was a Thorne wedding. I was just the bride. The evening stretched on in a performance of polite conversation and carefully avoided topics. Richard emerged from his study with Marcus, both men wearing identical expressions of serious discussion. Father and son, partner to partner. "A dynasty in the making, Natalie," Richard said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd never been told no. "Marcus tells me you're taking a leave of absence from the hospital after the wedding." "I was? Just temporarily," Marcus interjected quickly. "We thought it would be good for you to focus on getting settled. Maybe redecorate the house. Mom has some ideas for the guest rooms." "Of course she did. That sounds nice," I managed. Courtney leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Between us girls, I think it's romantic. Blake won't even let me take a week off when we get married. Too many deals pending." I excused myself to use the bathroom, needing air, needing space, needing something I couldn't name. The powder room was decorated in shades of cream and gold, spotless and impersonal. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, at the woman who'd learned to hide so well she'd almost disappeared. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend Rachel. "How's dinner with the in-laws from hell?" I smiled despite myself. Rachel had been my roommate before the fire. The one who'd pulled me from the burning building while her girlfriend went back for her laptop and never came out. We didn't talk about that night. We didn't have to. The guilt and gratitude between us was its own language. Surviving. Barely. "Remember, just 2 more weeks and you'll be Mrs. Marcus Thorne. Then you can move to that big house and never see them again." Except Marcus's office was at his father's firm. And Victoria had already mentioned wanting to have dinner every Sunday. And the country club membership came with social obligations. And everything. Everything was connected to being a Thorne. I splashed water on my face, careful not to disturb my makeup, and returned to the terrace. The conversation had shifted to business. Richard was explaining something about a development project downtown, a historic building that needed to be demolished for progress. Marcus was nodding along, engaged in a way I rarely saw him with me anymore. "Natalie works at Grace Memorial," Victoria said suddenly, pulling me into the conversation. "Don't you have some connection to that area, dear?" I did. The building they wanted to demolish housed a free clinic on the ground floor. One I'd helped secure funding for. One that served the community that couldn't afford places like Grace Memorial. The Riverside building, I said carefully. Yes, I'm familiar with it. Eyesore, Richard declared. Prime real estate being wasted on that neighborhood. Our development will transform the entire district. There's a clinic. We'll be compensated and relocated. Richard cut me off smoothly. All very proper and legal. No need to worry about the details. But details were everything. That clinic served 3,000 patients a year. Many of them immigrants, many without insurance. Relocation meant closure, and everyone at this table knew it. I looked at Marcus, waiting for him to say something. Anything. He was staring at his wine glass. Well, Courtney said brightly, sensing the tension, I think it's wonderful that Richard is revitalizing that area. Blake's firm is actually considering an investment. Right, honey? Blake nodded, still looking uncomfortable. The conversation moved on. I stayed quiet, sipping water, counting down the minutes until we could leave. Around me, they discussed market projections and property values and profit margins. No one mentioned the people who would be displaced. The clinic that would close. The community that would lose its lifeline. This was my future. These conversations, this table, this careful dance of saying nothing while appearing to participate. You're awfully quiet tonight, Marcus said later as we drove home to my apartment. He still called it my apartment, even though he'd been spending most nights there. After the wedding, I'd move into his house. Another detail already decided. Just tired. Mom thinks you don't like her. I turned to look at him. Did she say that? Not directly, but I can tell. You could try to engage more. Show some enthusiasm about the wedding planning. I thought the wedding was already planned. You know what I mean. His jaw tightened. This is important to my family, to me. I need you to make an effort. We pulled up to my building, a modest complex in a neighborhood Victoria had once described as charming, in a tone that meant the opposite. Marcus turned off the engine but didn't move to get out. Is something wrong? I asked. I've been thinking. He stared straight ahead, his hands still on the steering wheel. About us. About the wedding. About everything. My heart started pounding. What do you mean? Nothing. Never mind. He forced a smile. I'm just stressed with work. Come on, let's go inside. But something had shifted. I felt it in the air between us, heavy and unspoken. Inside my apartment, Marcus headed straight for the bedroom while I checked my email. There was a message from the hospital's development director. The Riverside Clinic had reached out, desperate for advocacy. Richard Thorne's company was accelerating the demolition timeline. They needed someone to speak up at the city council meeting next week. I stared at the email, thinking about Victoria's tight smile. Richard's dismissive tone. Marcus's silence. Babe, are you coming to bed? Marcus called from the bedroom. I closed my laptop. Yeah, just finishing some work. But as I lay in the darkness next to him, listening to his breathing even out into sleep, I couldn't stop thinking about that clinic. About the choice between speaking up and keeping the peace. About the woman I'd been before the fire, who wouldn't have hesitated to fight for what was right. That woman wouldn't recognize me now. The next morning, Marcus left early for the office, kissing my forehead and reminding me about another dinner with his parents that weekend. After he left, I stood in my bathroom, really looking at myself for the first time in months. The scars ran down my left side like rivers finding their path to the sea. My shoulder, my ribs, my hip, my thigh, my calf. 7 years of healing, of surgeries, of physical therapy. 7 years of long sleeves and careful positioning and strategic clothing choices. I pulled out my phone and texted Rachel. Coffee? Need to talk. Her response was immediate. Already brewing. Come over. Rachel lived in a converted loft downtown, all exposed brick and industrial chic. She opened the door in paint-stained overalls, her dark curls piled on top of her head. The smell of coffee and turpentine wafted from inside. You look terrible, she said, pulling me into a hug. Thanks. I mean, you look beautiful, but also terrible. Come tell me what Prince Charming did now. We settled on her couch, mugs in hand, surrounded by her latest artwork. Rachel had turned her survivor's guilt into art, creating massive canvases that explored themes of loss and transformation. Critics called her work visceral and haunting. I called it brave. "I think Marcus wants to call off the wedding," I said. Rachel nearly spit out her coffee. "What? Why?" "He didn't say it directly. But last night, he started saying something about us and the wedding and everything. Then he backed off. But I felt it, Rach. He's pulling away. Has he said anything specific? Done anything?" I told her about the honeymoon change, the constant suggestions to cover up, Victoria's comments, the way Marcus had been distant lately, always on his phone, always distracted. "Okay," Rachel said slowly. "Let me ask you something. Do you even want to marry him?" The question hit me like cold water. "What? You heard me. Do you want to marry Marcus Thorne? Not his family, not his money, not the security. Him. Do you love him?" I opened my mouth to say yes, of course. What kind of question was that? But the words stuck in my throat. "I love who he was," I said finally. "When we first met, he was different then, attentive, interested in my work. He asked questions about the fire, about my recovery, and he didn't flinch. He made me feel like the scars didn't matter. And now? Now he suggests the Maldives so no one will see me in a swimsuit." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "You know what I think? I think you should speak at that city council meeting about the clinic. I think you should remind yourself who you are outside of being Marcus Thorne's almost wife. His family would hate it. So I'm marrying into that family in 2 weeks. Are you, though?" Rachel set down her mug. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're marrying into a prison. And they're not even trying to hide the bars." I wanted to argue, to defend Marcus, to defend my choice, to defend the future I'd been planning. But sitting there in Rachel's loft, surrounded by her honest, unflinching art, I couldn't find the words. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Need to talk tonight. Important. Don't make dinner plans." My stomach dropped. "He wants to talk tonight. Says it's important." Rachel read the message over my shoulder. "Well, that's not ominous at all. What do I do?" "You listen, and then you decide what you're worth." I spent the rest of the day in a fog of anxiety. I went to the hospital, sat through meetings, reviewed budgets, and approved requisitions. My assistant, Kim, noticed my distraction. "Everything okay with the wedding planning?" she asked, setting a stack of files on my desk. "Fine. Everything's fine. Because if you need any help, my sister's a wedding planner. She could—" I said it's fine. Kim backed off, but I saw the concern in her eyes. I was usually calm, professional, approachable. Today, I was unraveling. At 4 o'clock, I got a call from Dr. Sarah Chen, who ran the Riverside Clinic. We'd worked together on several fundraising initiatives. "Natalie, thank God. Did you get the email about the city council meeting?" "I did. We desperately need someone from Grace Memorial to speak on our behalf. Someone with credibility. Someone who understands what this clinic means to the community." She paused. "We need you." I thought about Marcus waiting at my apartment, about Victoria's tight smile, about the careful future I'd constructed. "When's the meeting?" "Tomorrow night. 7 p.m. I know it's last minute, but I'll be there." The words came out before I could stop them. Sarah's relief was audible. "Thank you. Thank you so much. This could make all the difference." After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone. Tomorrow night. The same night, Victoria had scheduled another wedding planning session. The same night, I was supposed to meet with the caterer and finalize the menu. I texted Marcus. "Running late at the hospital. What time did you want to talk?" His response was immediate. "Just come to my place when you can. I'll wait." Marcus's house was in an expensive neighborhood full of modern architecture and perfectly maintained lawns. It was beautiful, sterile. Every surface carefully curated. Nothing out of place. He let me in without his usual smile, his face serious. "Want something to drink?" "Just tell me what's wrong." We sat in his living room, on the couch his mother had helped him pick out. Everything in this house had Victoria's fingerprints on it. After the wedding, it would have mine too. Or at least my presence. My things carefully arranged in designated spaces. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Marcus began. About us. About the future. About what kind of life we want to build together. Okay. And I love you, Natalie. I do, but I'm not sure I'm ready for marriage. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and final. You're not ready, I repeated. 2 weeks before our wedding. With 200 guests invited. With deposits paid and flowers ordered and a dress altered. You're not ready. I know the timing is terrible. Terrible doesn't begin to cover it. Please, just listen. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing. Now it just looked calculated. This isn't about you. It's about me. About the pressure from my family, from the firm, from everyone expecting us to be this perfect couple. We are a couple. But are we perfect? He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd been denying for months. Doubt, regret, escape. What are you really saying, Marcus? I'm saying maybe we should postpone. Give ourselves some time to figure things out without all this pressure. Postpone. The word felt like a lie wrapped in kindness. Your mother planned this wedding, I said slowly. Every detail. Every moment. She invited her friends, your father's business associates, everyone who matters in your world. And now, 2 weeks before you want to postpone? I'll handle my mother. Will you? I stood up, anger finally cutting through the shock. Will you handle her the way you handled her comments about my job? About my apartment? About my clothes? The way you handled your father's dismissal of the clinic that serves thousands of people? By saying nothing? That's not fair. No, what's not fair is stringing me along for 2 years while you figured out if you could handle being married to someone with scars. The words were out before I could stop them. The truth we'd both been dancing around finally spoken aloud. Marcus's face went pale. That's not what this is about, isn't it? The honeymoon change. The long sleeves you prefer. Your mother's comments about my layers. The way you tense up when anyone asks about how we met. Because God forbid you have to mention the hospital fundraiser, which might lead to questions about why I was there, which might reveal that your fiancé isn't perfect. You're being unfair. I'm being honest. Finally. I grabbed my purse. You want to postpone? Fine. Postpone. Cancel. Whatever helps you sleep at night. But don't pretend this is about pressure or timing or anything other than the fact that you're ashamed of me. Natalie, wait. I was already at the door. Your mother can handle the cancellations. She planned everything anyway. I'm sure she'll be relieved. I drove home on autopilot, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Only when I was safely inside my apartment did I let myself break down. Not because I'd lost Marcus, but because I'd wasted 2 years trying to be someone small enough to fit into his perfect life. My phone rang. Rachel. He did it, didn't he? How did you know? Because men like him always do. Right before they have to commit. Right when it gets real. Her voice was gentle. Want me to come over? No, I need to be alone. To think. Okay, but Nat? This is the best thing that could have happened. I wanted to believe her. Instead, I lay on my couch, staring at the ceiling, thinking about wedding invitations that needed to be recalled, and deposits that would be lost, and the dress hanging in my closet that fit perfectly. My phone buzzed again. This time, an unknown number. Is this Natalie Chen? This is Emily from the bridal boutique. We tried to reach your fiancé about his final tuxedo fitting, but his number seems to be disconnected. Could you have him call us? Marcus had already disconnected his number. No, not disconnected. Blocked them. Which meant he'd been planning this. This wasn't a spontaneous crisis of conscience. This was calculated. I called the boutique back. This is Natalie Chen. I need to cancel my dress order. Cancel. But the wedding is in 2 weeks. Our cancellation policy, keep the deposit. I don't care. Just cancel it. I hung up before she could respond. Then I pulled up my contacts and found Victoria's number. My finger hovered over the call button. Part of me wanted to let Marcus handle it, to let him face his mother's disappointment. But another part of me, the part that was tired of being small and silent, needed to do this myself. The phone rang 3 times before Victoria answered, her voice crisp and professional. "Natalie? This is unexpected. The wedding is off. Silence. I see. And when did Marcus plan to inform his family? Ask him." "Don't be childish, Natalie. These things happen. Cold feet are perfectly normal. I'm sure once Marcus has time to think, he doesn't need time. He needs permission, from you, to admit that his perfect future doesn't include someone like me." "Someone like you?" Victoria's voice turned cold. "And what exactly does that mean?" "Someone scarred. Someone who doesn't photograph well. Someone whose past isn't pretty enough for the Thorne family narrative." "You're being dramatic. I'm being honest. Something your family wouldn't recognize if it showed up in a designer suit." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but this time it was adrenaline, not grief. I felt alive for the first time in months. My phone immediately started ringing. Victoria calling back. Then Marcus. Then a number I didn't recognize, probably Richard. I turned my phone off and sat in the silence of my apartment, feeling the weight of 2 years of compromise lifting off my shoulders. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. I ignored all of them. Instead, I put on a short-sleeved blouse, something I hadn't worn in public in 2 years, and a skirt that ended just below my knee. My scars were visible, all of them. The melted tissue on my arm, the grafted skin on my calf. At the hospital, Kim did a double-take when I walked into the office. New look? Old look, just rediscovered. I spent the morning catching up on actual work, not wedding planning. The Riverside Clinic situation was worse than I'd thought. Richard's company had expedited the demolition permits. They were planning to shut down the clinic in less than a month, right before the holidays. 3,000 patients would lose their primary care provider overnight, Dr. Chen called at lunch. "Please tell me you're still speaking tonight. I'll be there. Thank God, because I have to be honest, Natalie. Without institutional backing from a hospital like Grace Memorial, we don't stand a chance. The Thorne Development Group has too much influence with the city council. The Thorne Development Group, Marcus's family. My almost family, I understand. And you're still willing to go up against them?" I looked down at my visible scars, at the evidence of survival written on my skin. Yes. The city council chambers were packed that night. I recognized several faces from the clinic. Patients, volunteers, community activists. And in the back row, dressed in an expensive suit, sat Richard Thorne himself. Next to him was Marcus. They'd come to intimidate. To remind me who had power in this room. I took my seat in the public comment section, my heart pounding. Dr. Chen squeezed my hand. "You've got this," she whispered. When they called my name, I walked to the microphone with my shoulders back and my scars visible. I didn't hide. I didn't apologize. I didn't make myself small. "My name is Natalie Chen. I'm the Director of Community Relations at Grace Memorial Hospital. 7 years ago, I was a pre-med student with a future in surgery. Then a fire destroyed that future, along with my apartment and my roommate's life. The Riverside Clinic was where I went for follow-up care after my insurance ran out. Where I learned that medical care isn't just about expensive hospitals and specialized surgeons. It's about community, about showing up, about serving the people who need it most." I could feel Richard's eyes boring into me. I didn't look at him. I kept my focus on the council members. The Thorne Development Group would like you to believe that this is about progress, about revitalizing a neighborhood, about economic growth. But what they're really asking you to approve is the displacement of 3,000 patients who depend on the Riverside Clinic for their health care. 3,000 people who will lose access to primary care, preventive services, and chronic disease management because profit matters more than people. My voice was steady now, strong. This was who I'd been before I learned to hide. "I'm asking you to delay this demolition until the clinic can be relocated to a suitable facility. I'm asking you to choose community over convenience, to choose people over profit, to choose what's right over what's easy." I returned to my seat in silence. Behind me, I heard Richard stand and leave. Marcus followed. The vote was close, but we won. 5-4 in favor of delaying the demolition for 6 months to allow for proper relocation of the clinic. Outside the chambers, Dr. Chen threw her arms around me. You did it. You actually did it. We did it. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. We need to talk. This isn't over. I deleted it without responding. Because he was wrong. It was over. And I was just beginning. Rachel was waiting at my apartment with champagne when I got home. I saw the video, she said, pulling me inside. Someone live-streamed the meeting. You were incredible. Fierce. That's the Natalie I remember. We drank champagne straight from the bottle, laughing about Victoria's face when she heard the news, about Marcus's cowardice, about 2 years wasted on a man who wanted me smaller. So what's next? Rachel asked. I pulled out my phone and navigated to Marcus's social media. His relationship status still said, engaged to Natalie Chen. First, I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly why this wedding was canceled. Not his version. Mine. I opened a new post, my fingers steady on the keys. Wedding update, the marriage is off. Turns out my fiancé wanted a bride without scars, and I wanted a husband without shame. We couldn't both get what we wanted. The dress was beautiful, though. Shame to waste it. I hit post before I could second-guess myself. Then I tagged Marcus, his parents, and every single person who'd been invited to our wedding. Rachel's eyes went wide. Oh my God, you didn't. I did. My phone immediately exploded with notifications, comments, messages, shares. Within minutes, the post had hundreds of reactions, and that's when I saw it. A photo posted 3 hours ago, Marcus and Courtney holding hands, her face pressed against his chest. Her left hand prominently displayed, showing off a massive diamond ring. The caption read, "When you know, you know." Posted before our wedding was even officially canceled. Before the guests were notified. Before the world knew we were over. He'd been planning this all along. Not just leaving me. Replacing me. Rachel saw my face and grabbed my phone. That absolute 3 weeks, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. He posted engagement photos 3 weeks before our wedding. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that it went beyond hurt into something else entirely. Clarity, purpose, rage refined into diamond-hard determination. Rachel looked at me, recognizing something dangerous in my expression. What are you thinking? I smiled, thinking about the Riverside Clinic, about speaking up, about reclaiming power. I'm thinking that Marcus and his family just made a very big mistake. What kind of mistake? I pulled up my laptop, accessing files I'd accumulated during 2 years of dinner parties and family gatherings. Conversations I'd overheard. Business deals discussed openly around me because I'd been invisible. Harmless, just Marcus's quiet fiancé. The kind, I said slowly, that I've been documenting without even realizing it. Rachel leaned over my shoulder, reading the screen. Holy shit. Is that Richard Thorne's development projects? Yes, including several that might not pass legal scrutiny if someone were to look closely, which I plan to do. Nat, are you sure about this? I looked at her, really looked at her. You asked me earlier if I loved Marcus. The truth is, I don't know if I ever did. I loved the idea of being chosen, of being normal enough, pretty enough, whole enough to deserve love. But that's not love. That's just fear in a wedding dress. And now? Now I'm done being afraid. I pulled up the photo of Marcus and Courtney again, studying it more closely. They were standing in front of a restaurant I recognized, the same one where Marcus had proposed to me. He hadn't even bothered to find a new location. Just a new woman. Easier to control. More photogenic. Less scarred. My phone rang. Victoria. I answered on speaker so Rachel could hear. Natalie, I think we should talk about your little performance at the city council meeting. There's nothing to talk about. My husband's development projects are none of your concern. You're not family. You were barely even a fiancé, barely? I was engaged to your son for 2 years while he was planning to leave me for his ex. An ex he's apparently been with long enough to get engaged in the 3 weeks since he called off our wedding. Don't be naive. These things take time to develop. Marcus and Courtney have always had a connection. You were just a phase. The words were meant to wound. Instead, they clarified everything. A phase, I repeated. 2 years of my life. Wedding deposits. Career compromises. Making myself smaller so I'd fit into your perfect family portrait. Just a phase. Don't be dramatic. Marcus offered to compensate you for any financial losses. Very generous considering. Considering what? That he's humiliated me publicly? Or that your family's business practices border on criminal? Victoria's voice turned ice cold. I'd be very careful about making accusations you can't prove. Who said I can't prove them? Silence, you're bluffing. Am I? Because I spent 2 years at your dinner parties, Victoria. 2 years listening to Richard discuss business deals, projects, permits that got expedited through connections, building inspections that got overlooked, campaign contributions that bought favorable votes. I'm just the quiet, scarred girl in the corner. But I have excellent hearing and a very good memory, if you think I'm not finished. Your son posted engagement photos to another woman before informing his wedding guests that our marriage was canceled. That's not just cruel, it's calculated. And it makes me wonder what else he's been calculating. What else your family has been hiding behind your perfect reputation. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but from exhilaration now, not fear. Rachel was staring at me with something like awe. Okay, who are you and what have you done with my best friend? I'm the woman who should have spoken up 2 years ago. I'm just making up for lost time. Over the next hour, I compiled everything. Every conversation I'd overheard. Every suspicious detail about Richard's development projects. Every moment I'd been invisible enough to witness things I wasn't supposed to see. The Riverside building wasn't the first questionable project. It was just the most recent. The morning after Victoria's threatening phone call, I woke up to find my story had gone viral. Not just the wedding cancellation post. Someone had screenshot Marcus and Courtney's engagement photo with the timestamp clearly visible, placing it 3 weeks before our scheduled wedding date. The internet had done what it does best, connected the dots and rendered judgment. My phone was flooded with messages. Some supportive, some vicious. But the one that caught my attention was from an investigative journalist named Diana Reeves. I've been researching the Thorn Development Group for 6 months. We should talk. I met Diana at a coffee shop far from the hospital, far from Marcus's world. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of intensity that came from years of chasing stories people didn't want told. You've caused quite a stir, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. The Thorn family doesn't usually get challenged publicly. I'm learning that. I've been investigating Richard Thorn's business practices since the Riverside building story broke. But every source I find either backs out or suddenly can't remember details. She leaned forward. Until I saw your city council speech. You're not afraid of them. I wasn't. Now I'm terrified. But I'm doing it anyway, Diana smiled. Good. Fear means you understand what you're up against. Now tell me everything you know. For the next 2 hours, I recounted every dinner party conversation, every business discussion I'd overheard while being treated as invisible. The pattern emerged clearly. Richard Thorn's empire was built on connections, favors, and strategically overlooked regulations. This is gold, Diana said, taking notes. But I need documentation. Paper trails, emails, something concrete. I might have something. I pulled out my phone, navigating to my cloud storage. Marcus used to work from my apartment sometimes. He'd leave his laptop open, take calls in the other room. I never thought much of it, but I showed her the folder. I have screenshots. Nothing confidential that I deliberately stole. Just things I happened to see when using the computer we shared. Diana's eyes widened as she scrolled through the files. This is bigger than I thought. These emails show direct coordination between Richard and city council members. Payments disguised as consulting fees. This isn't just unethical, it's fraud. What do we do with it? We build a case. I write the story. But I need you to go on record. Full name, full story, everything. She looked at me seriously. The Thorn family will come after you with everything they have. Legal teams, PR campaigns, character assassination. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Marcus's engagement photo, about Courtney's perfect smile, about 2 years of making myself smaller quieter, less visible. Yes. Then let's burn it all down. The next week was a blur of preparation. Diana worked with her editorial team while I compiled evidence. My lawyer, recommended by Rachel, advised me on what I could legally share and what would cross into privileged territory. Everything I provided came from my own observations, my own experiences, my own documentation. Meanwhile, Marcus and Courtney's engagement was everywhere. Society pages, social media. They'd hired a PR firm to manage their love story narrative, a tale of childhood sweethearts reuniting after years apart. I wasn't mentioned. I'd been erased from the timeline entirely, as if 2 years of my life had never existed. Victoria sent a formal letter from her attorney, demanding I cease all defamatory statements about the Thorne family. I framed it and hung it in my bathroom, reading it every morning while I got ready for work. The hospital administration called me in for a meeting. My boss, Dr. Patricia Armstrong, sat behind her desk with an expression I couldn't quite read. Natalie, you understand that Grace Memorial has significant donors from the Thorne family circle. I do. And you're aware that your very public stance against Richard Thorne's development projects has created tension. I'm aware. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Good, because I wanted you to know that the board met yesterday. They voted unanimously to support your position on the Riverside Clinic. Richard Thorne called 3 board members personally trying to pressure them. It didn't work, she smiled. Turns out most of our board members became doctors because they actually care about patients, not profit margins. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank yourself for being brave enough to speak up. She slid a folder across the desk. That said, I think you should see this. It came through unofficial channels. Inside was a dossier on me. My medical history, my financial records, my dating history before Marcus, even transcripts from my therapy sessions after the fire, supposedly confidential medical records that someone had illegally obtained. The Thorne family? I asked, almost certainly. They're building a case to discredit you before Diana Reeves's story drops. They're going to argue you're unstable, vindictive, a scorned woman making false accusations. I looked through the file, seeing my life reduced to data points meant to destroy my credibility, my post-fire depression, my financial struggles during recovery, a college boyfriend who'd left me after the accident. This is illegal, yes, which is why our legal team has already filed complaints with the appropriate authorities. Patricia's expression hardened. Nobody messes with Grace Memorial's staff. Nobody. That evening, Diana called. The story runs tomorrow. Front page digital edition hits at 6 a.m. Print follows. Are you ready? No, but let's do it anyway. I've added a section about the illegal dossier. The fact that they're trying to discredit you actually strengthens our narrative, shows their pattern of intimidation. What about Marcus and Courtney? Oh, that's the best part? Diana's voice carried a grim satisfaction. My research team discovered something interesting. Courtney started working at Richard's firm 3 months before your wedding. Marcus was assigned as her direct supervisor. The timeline of their relationship tells a very different story than their childhood sweethearts narrative. They've been together for months, at least. And there's more. Courtney's previous employer? She left under suspicious circumstances. Something about inappropriate relationships with engaged colleagues. It's all documented, though they tried to bury it with an NDA. How did you? I'm very good at my job. The question is, do we include it in tomorrow's story or save it for the follow-up? I thought about Marcus's face when he'd said he wasn't ready for marriage, about the honeymoon change, about every moment he'd made me feel like my scars were something to hide. Include it. All of it. The story dropped at 6 a.m. like a bomb detonating across the city's morning commute. Diana had titled it Beneath the Surface, How One Family Built an Empire on Corruption and Left a Trail of Victims. It was devastating, meticulous, irrefutable. She'd documented years of Richard Thorne's questionable business practices, supported by the evidence I'd provided plus her own investigative work. The illegal dossier on me, the pattern of intimidation, The city council corruption. The Riverside Clinic was framed as just the latest example of a family that valued profit over people. And in the final section, she'd included the personal story. My relationship with Marcus, the canceled wedding, the engagement photo posted before guests were notified, Courtney's employment history. The timeline that proved their love story was actually a calculated affair that began while Marcus was still engaged to me. Diana had even found the restaurant. Receipts, Marcus and Courtney had been having private dinners. For 4 months before the wedding cancellation, my phone exploded with notifications, messages, calls, friend requests from strangers, news outlets requesting interviews. But the 3 numbers I was watching stayed silent. Marcus, Victoria, Richard, until 9 a.m., when all 3 called simultaneously. I didn't answer. Instead, I got dressed in a sleeveless dress that showed every scar and drove to the hospital. The lobby was filled with news cameras. They'd been waiting for me. Ms. Chen, do you have a comment on the Thorne family's response? What response? I asked, stopping. A reporter thrust a phone at me, showing Richard Thorne's official statement. These allegations are completely false and motivated by a vindictive ex-fiancé who can't accept that the relationship ended. We will pursue all legal remedies. I looked directly at the camera. I welcome legal action. Discovery should be very interesting. That soundbite played on every news channel for the rest of the day. Inside the hospital, I was met with something unexpected. Applause. Staff members, doctors, nurses, administrators, people I'd worked with for years, were clapping as I walked through the halls. "You're a hero," Kim said, tears in her eyes. "Do you know how many women have wanted to stand up to powerful men like that but were too afraid?" I wasn't a hero. I was just tired of being invisible. The next 48 hours were chaos. The city's ethics commission launched an investigation into the Thorne Development Group. 3 city council members resigned. Richard's business partners began quietly distancing themselves. Major investors pulled funding, and Marcus's engagement to Courtney fell apart spectacularly when her previous employer released a statement confirming she'd been terminated for conduct unbecoming after an affair with a senior partner who'd been engaged at the time. The society pages that had celebrated their engagement now ran correction notices and op-eds about the importance of fact-checking. Courtney deleted her social media. Marcus went into hiding. Victoria tried one last power play. She showed up at the hospital demanding to see me. Security called my office. "There's a Victoria Thorne in the lobby insisting she has a meeting with you." She doesn't. She's not leaving. I went down to the lobby, where Victoria stood in designer clothes and barely controlled rage. "You've destroyed my family," she said. "No. I exposed what your family had already destroyed. There's a difference. Marcus loved you. Marcus was ashamed of me, and you encouraged it. Every comment about my clothes, my job, my life, you taught him to see me as less than. So no, Victoria. Marcus didn't love me. He loved the idea of fixing me, of being the generous man who overlooked my flaws. Until he found someone easier. Courtney was a mistake. Courtney was a symptom. The mistake was thinking you could all behave however you wanted without consequences." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "I spent 2 years making myself smaller so I'd fit into your world. Covering my scars, quieting my voice, letting your family steamroll over communities like the one that saved my life. I'm done. If you think this is over, it is over. Your husband is under investigation. Your son's reputation is ruined. Your perfect family image is shattered. And I'm just getting started on the follow-up story about the other communities your developments have displaced." Victoria's face went white. "You're vindictive. I'm accountable. Something your family should try." She left without another word. I watched her go, feeling the weight of 2 years finally lift from my shoulders. That evening, Rachel threw a celebration at her loft. Not a celebration of revenge, but of reclamation. "To Natalie," she toasted, raising her glass, "who reminded us all that scars are just proof you survived something that tried to break you." Dr. Chen from the Riverside Clinic was there. along with several patients whose lives had been disrupted by Richard's development projects. Diana Reeves came, fresh from filing 3 more investigative pieces. "The SEC is getting involved," Diana told me quietly. "Richard's trading patterns before his development announcements look suspicious. This could be bigger than fraud. We're talking insider trading, market manipulation." Good. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Natalie?" Marcus's voice was barely recognizable. "I need to talk to you. We have nothing to discuss. Please. Just 5 minutes." "I need to explain what? That you were cheating for months? That you called off our wedding via text? That you posted engagement photos to another woman before our guests even knew we'd broken up?" I laughed, surprising myself with how bitter it sounded. "Or maybe you want to explain how you used my scars as an excuse when really you just wanted someone your family approved of." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Marcus?" "Silence. That's what I thought. You don't even have the courage to be honest now." I looked around at the people celebrating in Rachel's loft, people who'd seen my scars and loved me anyway, who'd supported my voice instead of silencing it. "I spent 2 years trying to be enough for you. Trying to be less scarred, less opinionated, less myself. And you know what? I was miserable. Being with you made me smaller. Breaking free made me whole. I never meant to hurt you. You just meant to discard me quietly. But I didn't stay quiet. And that's what really bothers you, isn't it? Not that we broke up, but that I wouldn't disappear on command. My father might go to prison. Your father committed crimes. Actions have consequences. Courtney left me, said I was toxic. Can you believe that? I could absolutely believe it. Marcus attracted people he could control, and when that control slipped, he panicked. I'm hanging up now, Marcus. Don't call again. Wait, do you think we could ever? No. I ended the call and blocked his number. Rachel appeared at my elbow. Was that him? Yeah. What did he want? To be forgiven without actually apologizing. To be comforted without taking responsibility. The usual. And what did you say? I smiled, looking down at my arms, at the scars I'd spent 2 years hiding. They caught the light from Rachel's studio windows, silvered and permanent. Beautiful in their way. Proof of survival. I said no. 3 months later, I stood in a different courtroom, not as a defendant, but as a witness in the case against Richard Thorne and 3 city council members. The charges included fraud, bribery, corruption, and conspiracy. I testified for 4 hours, detailing everything I'd witnessed during my 2 years in the Thorne family orbit. My testimony was corroborated by documents, emails, and recordings from other witnesses. The defense attorneys tried to paint me as vengeful, but the evidence was overwhelming. Richard was convicted on 14 counts. He'd spent at least 5 years in federal prison. Marcus lost his position at the law firm. Victoria filed for divorce. Their social circle evaporated overnight. The Riverside Clinic not only stayed open but expanded, funded by donations that poured in after Diana's story ran. Dr. Chen named the new pediatric wing after me. I tried to refuse, but she insisted. "You gave these families their voice back," she said at the ribbon cutting. "That deserves recognition." Grace Memorial promoted me to Vice President of Community Health Initiatives. My first act was creating a program to provide free care for burn survivors, named after Rachel's girlfriend who'd died in the fire that changed my life. Rachel's art exhibit, featuring a series of pieces about transformation and reclamation, sold out in 3 days. Critics called it her best work yet. And me? I started dating again, slowly, carefully. But this time, I didn't hide my scars. I wore short sleeves and swimsuits and dresses that showed skin. The first time someone asked about my scars, I told them the truth. Fire, 7 years ago. I survived. Some people were uncomfortable. Some asked intrusive questions. But the right people, the ones worth keeping, saw the scars as part of my story, not the whole story. I ran into Courtney once, 6 months after everything imploded. She was in line at a coffee shop looking diminished somehow. "Smaller?" "Natalie," she said, her voice uncertain. "Courtney." I'm sorry. For everything. I didn't know. I mean, Marcus said you two were basically over and it's fine. Really? I looked at her. This woman who'd been so perfect, so photogenic, so eager to slip into the life I'd built. And I felt nothing. No anger, no jealousy. Just pity, really. You did me a favor. I was about to marry someone who wanted me invisible. You wanted someone who wanted you visible. We both got what we needed. He wasn't who I thought he was, she said quietly. No. He's exactly who you thought he was. You just thought you could change him. I paid for my coffee and left. Behind me, Courtney stayed frozen in line, probably finally understanding what I'd learned. You can't build a future on someone else's shame. A year after the wedding that never happened, I stood on a beach in Bali. Not the Maldives, where Marcus had wanted to hide me away. Bali, where tourists and locals mixed freely, where my scars drew curious glances but no judgment. I was there for a medical conference, but I'd extended the trip by a week. Just for me. To swim in public waters, to feel sun on skin I'd kept covered for years, to exist without apology. My phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. Saw Marcus on a dating app. His profile says he's looking for someone real. LOL. I laughed, tipping my face toward the sun. Real. After everything. He still didn't understand what that meant. Real was standing in a city council meeting and speaking truth to power. Real was refusing to hide the evidence of survival. Real was choosing discomfort over complicity, courage over convenience. Real was building a life where my scars weren't flaws to overcome but stories to honor. I'd spent 2 years trying to be worthy of Marcus Thorne's love, trying to be smooth and perfect and small. And in the end, the thing that saved me wasn't becoming what he wanted. It was remembering who I'd been before I learned to hide, the woman who'd wanted to be a surgeon, who'd fought through fire and pain and rehabilitation, who'd survived when survival seemed impossible. That woman had never needed Marcus's approval. She'd just needed to remember her own strength. I waded into the ocean, feeling the salt water sting against my scars. Around me, other tourists swam and played and existed in their imperfect bodies. A child pointed at my leg, asking her mother a question in a language I didn't understand. The mother smiled at me apologetically. I smiled back and kept swimming, because this freedom, this visibility, this unapologetic existence, was worth more than any perfect wedding, any acceptable husband, any carefully curated life where I had to hide to belong. Marcus had called off our wedding because of my scars. But those scars had saved me from a marriage that would have slowly erased everything I was. The fire had taken so much 7 years ago. My roommate, my career plans, the smooth skin I'd taken for granted. But it had also given me something, proof that I could survive anything, even heartbreak, even humiliation, even the destruction of a future I'd thought I wanted. I floated on my back, looking up at the blue sky, and thought about that wedding dress hanging in my closet. I'd donated it to a nonprofit that provided free wedding attire to domestic violence survivors starting new lives. Someone else would wear it now. Someone who was also choosing survival over safety, truth over comfort. The dress had fit perfectly. But the life it represented never had. My phone buzzed again. This time, Diana Reeves. Another family came forward. Similar story. Thorne Development displaced their community clinic. They want to know if you'd be willing to testify. I know you're on vacation, so no pressure. I smiled, already composing my reply. Send me the details. I'll be there. Because this was who I was now. Not Marcus's scarred ex-fiancé. Not the woman who'd learned to hide. But Natalie Chen, survivor, advocate, woman who'd learned that the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to disappear. The ocean held me up, buoyant and strong. My scars caught the sunlight, silver and permanent and beautiful. Perfect. I was finally, completely perfectly myself, and no one, not Marcus, not his family, not anyone, could ever make me small again. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.